What's up, guys? It is Chaos here. Not gonna lie to you, a little disappointed that my first video didn't get more views or likes or anything of that sort than what it did. However, I guess I shouldn't have gotten my hopes up too much. I'm still kind of a small-time YouTuber. But you know, when you spend hours working on a video that's 15 minutes long, you kind of hope for better results than what happened. But I'm going to continue my video. I just feel the need to because I love Metro. I love playing on Metro. And I'm pretty convinced that it is one of the best chaotic chess matches that you can participate in. So to get things started, we're going to break down what happens when the Russians get driven off of the B flag. And I mean get really driven off the B flag. It's a common mistake. They usually set up a defense in the wrong spot, and as a result they get overrun and completely driven out of Metro altogether. And it sucks at that point because you really can't get back in Metro. You can do it, but it's really hard to. So I'm going to break down what to do as you're getting driven off of B and how to set up a proper defense to ensure that you won't get completely screwed in the ass for it. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down first what not to do, because that seems to be the biggest problem. People are doing the wrong things. So here we go. The Russians, or excuse me, the US just took control of B. You can see on this particular map where the Russians are gathered up at. For the most part, you can kind of see where they're gathered up at. What you don't see is really where the US is, but I can easily highlight that for you because one, I've played Metro enough to know exactly where they are, and B, I was playing in this game and it's actually where they are. They just weren't spotted. You can see that they are currently sitting in that little office space on the left-hand side of B flag. Now, the other location that they're at, you can see at least one little red Dorito there, is sitting right next to the escalators, right next to the B flag. The other location, of course, is lockers. And you notice that most of the Russians are kind of sitting there in the lockers, basically trying to fight back and regain control of lockers, which is good. You know, lockers is kind of a big, important location to control, but you don't just push back into that one location because the rest of the map is also being controlled by the Russians. If you're just fighting back to regain control of that one location, you are going to get badly outflanked. Now, usually what happens is the Russians set up a defense like this. They have a few guys who go and immediately defend the back of the alley. You have guys who go and they camp out along the turnstiles and maybe have a few snipers who hang out in the ticket kiosk there in the middle. And then the rest of the guys usually push into lockers. Looks like it's a solid defense. You got a solid line right there going across the middle of the field. The problem with that is, though, turnstiles is very, very weak. They don't have much in the way of control over the middle of the map, primarily because they don't have very good cover where they're sitting. Oftentimes they have to lay prone, and essentially they just have to have a very singular, narrow field of fire that they can shoot through when they're laying prone next to the turnstiles. As a result, this allows for enemy movement up the middle. And you can see by this image, this is really the space that gets controlled when you set up in this defense. What happens is, of course, you know, you're outside in the alley, so you're really not pushing through that choke point. The middle of the map is virtually wide open to the US side, not to mention up near the escalators where you're going to have snipers picking off the guys in the turnstiles and even picking off some guys in the kiosk. Now, as far as lockers is concerned, it's very hard to really control that very long, narrow path right there in the lockers. And what ends up happening is the US gets pushed into that tiny, tiny little circle that you see there, that itty-bitty little blue circle. That's usually where they end up getting stuck. And the biggest problem with that is, since they have virtual control over the middle of the map, they can easily run up the middle of the map and get a very good flanking maneuver on you. Not to mention, because turnstiles is a very weak defense to begin with, a solid push up the middle will allow them to basically bust through, particularly on the left-hand side. It's a little bit more difficult on the right because oftentimes you have guys who like to funnel in down that side of the map. But they'll break through on the left-hand side, work their way into the alley, and flank the defenders in the alley and start pushing down the alley into A. This becomes a huge problem, and usually when this happens, this is what the map quickly turns into. So you get pushed off a B, you're immediately driven back, you set up a piss poor defense, and literally before you know it, within just a couple minutes, you're driven back to these locations. I've marked them with the little blue and red dots to show you where the enemies are. You're almost driven completely out of the building, especially on the alley side. You're driven into the two corners inside, the two back corners inside of Metro, but for the most part, you're kind of screwed. It doesn't take too long before eventually they push in all the way through the middle, driving one of those corners outside. And once they're driven outside, the other corner is completely surrounded, and it's only a matter of time before they fall. So that's the do not defense number 1. Don't set up the way it was in Turnstiles. Now this is a little bit closer. This is a great example of close but no cigar. They set up in the ticket kiosk instead, which is good. The kiosk, I don't know if you've ever tried it, but oftentimes, if you get a good number of guys in there, man, it's like the damn Alamo. It's a bitch to get them out of there, especially on non-explosive servers. However, it can be done, especially when you set up in this defense. So you have guys in the kiosk and guys in the alley. Those two locations are correct. The problem is you have cowards who are too afraid to push up to the turnstiles to provide extra support on that left-hand side, and you also have guys who are too afraid to come around that corner there on the right-hand side. So what ends up happening is the folks in the kiosk basically get completely surrounded, and as a result they have tons of guys firing on them. Eventually they get worn out, picked off, charged in, and overwhelmed, and the next thing you know, they now have control of the middle of the map, and you can already see where this is going. Once they drive guys back, they drive them back out into the alley. They start driving them back into the back two left corners on the inside of the map, and eventually, once again, that corner gets completely surrounded. That right-hand corner gets surrounded, and eventually you get driven off of the objective altogether. And once you're driven outside, it's very difficult to actually get back inside, but I will be making another video about that later. So what is the proper defense to work here? It looks like this: 1, 2, 3, and 4. The number 1 location to gain control of is the kiosk, followed by that office on the right hand side at the end of lockers. These are the two top locations. That office allows you to get good fire control inside of lockers and basically prevents them from really coming down that tunnel if you do a good job at it. The other location is over at the turnstiles. Now you remember I said the turnstiles was a very weak defense. It is a weak defense, but it provides a very good supporting fire location, especially right there where I have it marked on 3. And of course the 4th location is the alley. You have to guard that rear flank, and the alleys are usually the place that breaks. And if it does break, you got to pay attention to it. Usually it's the guys from zone 3 who fall back and assure that no one outflanks them from behind. Sometimes guys from the kiosk will do that, but it's best to maintain positions 1 and 2 above all else. This is why it's so important. I drew red lines to show you basically the fields of fire that are available. Now, rather than just drawing one big red box, I decided to show you, draw lines to specific key areas, like going from zone 3 all the way down to the entrance of lockers. That's kind of a big one. So you can see there's quite a lot of overlapping fields of fire here. And what that means is you have complete control, almost complete control, over the middle part of that map. And the reason that's such a big deal is look at the areas that the enemy's now pinned down by. And you can see I marked them with their circles. Oftentimes enemies who try to push up in the middle will get pinned down right there next to those ATM machines on the right side, as well as getting pinned down next to the alley. So those two locations are virtually completely surrounded. In addition to that, the guys in the lockers are oftentimes forced to hang out just near the entrance, all the way near B flag. Plus, the guys over by the escalators are pinned down. They can't really move out into the center of the map because there's just too much fire coming from that direction, and it makes it impossible, or nearly impossible, to do much of anything. So, once you have those positions set up, it's fairly easy to get a solid push up the middle. you can easily outflank the opponents guarding the alley and the folks by the ATM machine. Once you start outflanking them, you can continue to push up into key areas, eventually outflanking lockers, driving up onto B flag. And once you've driven onto B flag, this is really what the setup looks like from there, all because you set up the proper defense. I've marked them with blue and red dots so you know where the people are, and you probably noticed something familiar about this map. The locations that these people seem to have control over reminds me of something. What was that? Oh yes, it reminds me of these key zones. You might recognize this. It looks a little familiar, and it should because I mentioned it in the last video. To gain control of B flag, you have to control 3 of those 4 zones. And that's exactly what happens. So making sure you set up a proper defense when you get driven off of B flag for both the Russians and the US, but in this case the Russians, is a very key part in making sure you stay competitive in Operation Metro. Thanks for watching. I tried to keep this one just a tad shorter than the last one, but I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you liking, sharing it, subscribing to my channel. I'll have more videos like this up and coming. Again, this is only part 2 of a little mini-series about breaking down Operation Metro. Make sure you go like Dawnbreaker Gaming. It's a great community of gamers started by a guy named Snoo603. I'll link his channel down in the description below. It's also started by a girl named Epona. I will also link her channel, although she's more of a Twitch gamer now. But I appreciate you watching. Again, like and subscribe to my channel and leave comments below. Let me know what you like about this video, what you didn't like, and maybe some videos that you'd like to see in the future. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the battlefield.